I wrote a family heritage book back in 2004 with The Faith of Benjamin, and my dissertation is analyzing a whole bunch of these books. And it's just clear as day that education permeates them. So helping people get educational documents is key. Ancestry.com now is running commercials highlighting the importance of education in African American ancestry. And the documents are just luminous. There are so many of them, and they give so much information. It's not just newspapers, but other records too. A major African American genealogy blogger talks about having gotten everything except the transcript for one ancestor, and then having gotten everything on an ancestor from Howard University. But it's not like that across the board. Sometimes you get a message like this saying you have to prove with a notarized letter that you're the last living family member before you can get records. So that's why the HBCU Newspaper History Project is so important. It documents changes over time, origins of papers, what's going on with them, and their availability for genealogy research. Here's an example of someone finding an ancestor in a paper that was digitized and indexed through the project. And that project is part of a bigger project to make all of the higher education records available so that people can tell their ancestral stories through the lens of education, which again is our preferred way based on the analysis of our published genealogies. So that is my take on HBCU newspapers and how they illuminate industry diversity. Samuel Yette is a good example of that with the meter. Du Bois is a good example of how literary history can be studied, and genealogy records are just all throughout these papers and the other school records. So let's have a talk about this.
Well, excellent job, Pam. I am so glad that we got a chance to hear all about your research. This is fantastic. I could say many things, but I'm glad that we got a chance to chat with you just a few minutes about what you're doing. My question for you is, how long have you been doing this research, and what really got you started doing it?
Well, like I said, it really, in a way, it started informally back in 1998. When I became advisor for the meter, I started paying attention to everything. I started collecting the documents I have all the papers. The library doesn't have all of the papers from the time that I was there, but I do. And, documenting the awards, documenting the relationships among the students and advisors. I think that's very important. I remember early on, the first editor and I pretty much had an agreement, like a good cop, bad cop thing. I would inadvertently hurt the students' feelings by pointing out errors and being stern about the fact that that's not how you do good journalism. And she was very much into the team building and, be the good cop, and which is important. You've got to have the team building. So that's why we were able to work well together. And again, Yette, having started the paper, remained a friend of the paper. So we were able to, I got interested in the change from his time through to my time, just because he was so involved with it. And when the paper started in 1950. So in 2000, its 50th anniversary, he wrote a retrospective, and he really kept in touch with the students. And that's a big part of why I became such a fan. And then, of course, you can't help but become a fan of the Fisk Herald as the first paper. I got really interested in learning a lot about the paper. But again, there's just so much to study. I hope nobody beats me to it, but I have not analyzed all of these writings under Du Bois's editorship to make any determinations about similarities or differences between those writings and his later writings. And that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to.
That's excellent. I have a question.
Yes, Will.
In 2013, we moved from a print product to a digital product. We have not printed anything since. Several years ago, we switched our digital content to another server and another host, and we lost a lot of information. Now, luckily, I have the Word files and the graphics and things like that. But how can HBCUs that don't have a print product ensure that digital material will continue to exist and be available?
That's a very important question. And that's why the HBCU Heritage Home exists, so that all of the records from all of the schools, and not just our interaction with the schools as attendees, but workers, the enslaved people working there too, all of our stories that we read, that I am analyzing in these published genealogies, connect in some way or another with education and with higher education. Again, we didn't have those names that are coming out now with all of the connection between higher education and slavery research that's going on now, but certainly people had stories in their families. They knew that so-and-so was the chauffeur for so-and-so at the university, or went there with a student as an aide, that sort of thing. So yeah, just throughout African-American family history, higher education, and particularly HBCUs, are all there. And all of those records, no matter how they're generated, need to be preserved. A big thing too is, more than half of the schools are closed now. There have been more than 250. There's now only 105. So many of those schools that have generated all these great documents no longer have custody because the school is closed. So finding the repositories that have all of those is all important. And again, that's why the HBCU Heritage Home as a genealogy, tourism, and research site is so important, so that all of those records can be accessible in one place, digitized. And that means people have work to do. Some of that stuff that was lost may be findable in tangible copies, in a corner in the archive somewhere, or in some former advisor, such as myself, in an office. It's funny, talking about that in the time of boxes being found at Mar-a-Lago. But that's true. Different people over time have different senses of what is important archival material, what's important to keep just during their own years of service, and or others. So yeah, I do hope someone has the papers you guys lost, and that they're found, and people can research their ancestors, and we all can research HBCU newspaper history.
Lots to be done. And we do want to make sure we have some time for our audience to ask questions. So we're going to pause at this point for audience